Hi, this is Manny Wolfe, and you're listening to Awakened Nation with Brad Zollis.
A huge shift is taking place on planet Earth. People seem to be waking up. Tired of the way things used to be, they are creating something brand new and changing the world we live in. My name is Brad Zollis, and I get to sit down with the next generation of idea makers, the disruptors, and the game changers. Everyday people, just like you and me, from all over, who are doing amazing things. Welcome to Awakened Nation.
Manny, it's great to have you on the show, brother.
It's good to be here, man. It's good to be here. This is one of those ones where it took a little bit of sort of winking at each other across the high school dance, the auditorium.
I know. You have to be a certain age to understand that reference, I believe. It's like kids are not shy today like we were, our generation.
Ain't that the truth?
Now, I've been dying to get you on the show, and it's part of the reason is your bio, and I'll just read this off real quick. It's Manny Wolfe is a testament to what can be achieved with the power of self-belief. Once a homeless drug addict who went on to serve time behind bars, Manny managed to transform his life through communication mastery, mindset control, and internal transformation. Responsible for building multiple 6- and 7-figure businesses today, Manny helps other businesses grow their customer base and make more sales through effective communication and simple, easy to implement marketing strategies. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Manny Wolfe.
That is a hell of a bio. I feel like I'm looking over my shoulder for the guy who's coming on after me.
Who is that guy?
It's really weird. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, let's go back to the beginning. I want to understand how you wound up in the position you did. As you know, the show is always about like, okay, life kind of, hit you in the back of the head. Mm-hmm. And unlike most people, they may have let it, drive them into the ground and give up. What did you do?
So I really want to bring something fresh to this discussion. I've been asked this question hundreds, if not thousands of times.
Right.
And if I'm being completely honest, Brad, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I look at my family and I see a bunch of people who without judging or disparaging them, they're not people of massive pluck and resolve. Possibly my mother, but my siblings. So it wasn't a genetic thing.
Right.
Unless it was my father, who I didn't know very well and very often. I didn't get to spend much time with him in my life. He had extraordinary fortitude. And the reason I bring all that up is to say that the only thing I can really, and I've dressed this up on so many interviews for so many people, and I've made it sound so much more like the triumphant underdog story. But if I'm being honest with you,
right,
I just kept getting back up.
Wow.
I just kept getting back up. And I don't really know where that came from, because I saw people, just as you alluded to, who let life beat them down, who bought into their stories, right? And those things will kill you, man. If the stories you've got working for you aren't productive, you're fucked.
It is. I don't know if you ever read the book A Child Called It by David Pelzer. And the way he was tortured, they actually changed California laws back in the 70s for how you treat children. If you don't treat children well, they save your life. And they've asked him this similar question. It's like, well, how did you do this? He goes, I don't know. And he has no bitterness towards his mother. He has no animosity. Yeah. He just got up and did what he had to do. And I think that might be what happened. You were thrown something on your shoulders and your tenacity ignited. Would you say that's what happened?
Well, yeah, that's as good a description as any. One thing that's very potent about humans is most of the time we take what we're given as children as just the way it is.
Right.
And so there was a lot that was really, really, I would say objectively pretty effed up,
Yeah. Yeah.
But even that you could argue, like I talk with my mom now and she's like, the way that you saw and experienced your childhood was totally different from the way that myself and I was born in a cult.
Wait.
Yeah.
You were born in a cult.
I was the first child born in a cult. In this particular cult, I was the first child born to it.
Wow.
And it wasn't a militant cult. So there are basically two kinds, right? There's a new age and there's militant.
Right.
Militant would be the religious kind, the David Koresh kind of deal, the Moonies, that kind of thing. And then there's new age, which is typically much looser.
Right.
Right. So as an example, when I was a teenager, I just sort of drifted away from the cult. You know, there was no massive, okay, but what there was some decisions made that were pretty much uniformly catastrophic for the kids that were there. They would do childcare and they'd have one person watch the kids for 5 hours at a time. And there were like 20 kids. So you got one person who, as often as not, I would learn later, was, high on LSD, watching all the kids.
Wow.
And I just, luck of the draw, I was sort of too young to be with the older kids and too old to be with the younger kids.
Wow.
So,
yes.
So there was this real sense of isolation. Yeah. This outsider feeling, this sense of isolation within a big group. There were, one of them, I think the most catastrophic thing was the whole group, they referred to themselves as a commune. I only learned in I think it was my early 40s or late 30s that they actually fit the checklist of a cult. And so, whether you want to think of them as a commune or a cult, the most catastrophic thing they did was they made a decision, just a Hail Mary decision, to move from the Berkeley, San Francisco area, which was perfect. Like, you didn't know you were outsiders if you were in a commune or a cult down there at that time, right? It was contextually, it made perfect sense. We lived down the street from Jefferson Starship, Jefferson Airplane at the time. It was really, so there was some stuff about it that was really colorful and really interesting. Mm-hmm. But then we moved to not just Stockton, California, which, by the way, just for fun, I saw an ad coming through my Facebook feed about the Stockton revitalization effort. And I'm like, well, that's that's a circle jerk if I ever saw one. So I go and I Google, as I do every few years, top 10 most violent cities in the United States. And lo and behold, from the day I moved there at like 8 years old till now, it's been on the top 10 list. So we're talking about 46 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a dangerous place. And we moved to the center of the worst neighborhood.
Whoa.
It was like somebody should make a movie about it. It was so crazy. And so I went from, this sort of, again, contextually, an environment where to be hippies and to be in a cult or a commune wasn't really that unusual. The Haight-Ashbury district.
Right.
To literally like this one big preserved mansion in the middle of post-apocalyptic ghetto. And so we just had targets on our back from the minute we rolled in. So I went to having to fight all the time. I went to fearing for my life. And I went into a few years while living in Stockton of just sort of being in high fight or flight all the time. And somewhere in that, the part of me that doesn't give up was sort of revealed. Like, I think about like Gandalf throwing the ring on the flame and only then do the letters come out. It was that kind of a deal.
Right.
I may never have discovered that side of me had we not lived there.
Wow.
So
I don't think I've ever heard the term living in a mansion in the middle of a ghetto, quite so eloquently put, but you painted this picture of you're living in one of the most violent, rundown neighborhoods, and then you move into the center of it. and the cult leader, and everybody's like, hey, this is kind of cool. You know what?
And kind of cool.
and people don't understand, you know, when you look back on the timeline, there's certain things that when you say Berkeley, free speech, or you say Kent State, immediately we know what's happened, you know, because we lived through that era. And then when they talk about Stockholm and all this other stuff, and you're like, whoa, yeah, okay, I get that. The cults were very big in the 70s and early 80s, because it was sort of this rise of spiritual, you know, spirituality, this new agey kind of stuff. And people were just I don't know what was going on. I mean, maybe you probably understand the mindset that draws somebody into a cult at this point, but it's sort of like they give up their sense of independence and their want to control their own destiny and their own freedom for this feeling of euphoria, is probably the best way I can put it. And I too have sought, you know, this new age, feeling of euphoria. And the reality is it's a real easy way to avoid your shit. Let's put it that way. It's a real easy way to, we can get into the shadow work. You have to do the shadow work, especially if you're a man in this day and age. And I think you live through all this sort of rainbows and unicorns crap that happens to the adults around you. And as a child, you go with it, but eventually you sit up and you go, hey, there's a problem here.
That's pretty apt. You know, it was, I think probably around the time we moved to Stockton was the age where I was able to start perceiving that there's something off here. You know, one of the things that for some reason always stuck with me was there was always this like weird spiritual one-upsmanship within particularly I noticed the men in this commune. And so from a very young age, I was able to quote Buddha and Jesus and Confucius and Lao Tzu and all of these people, but I did it in this weird way because the way it was shown to me was it through this, like, I'm so much more spiritual than you, and I can quote the Bible to prove it, or I can quote, you know, whatever to prove it. There was always this sense of like, everybody's just kind of like stretching these smiles over their faces, but shit doesn't connect right. You know,
it's fakery. Yeah. Spiritual fakery.
It's deep fakery. And what I would learn later is that it in order to be able to sort of give yourself over to the cult ethos or the cult energy, for lack of a better word, what you have to do is you have to regress a little bit.
Right.
And that's what you were saying. So we had, 45 or 50, back then I thought they were adults. Now I realize they were 20 somethings,
right?
But they had, without knowing they'd done it, they had regressed emotionally to a sort of a mid-teens level, because that's the only way that you can, as an adult, give over your sort of sovereignty to a charismatic leader. For some reason right now, this is just really front and center. For me, it makes watching the marketing world a really strange phenomenon.
Yeah. You know, the fact that you just brought that up, because I work in marketing, and there's a part of marketing that, to me, I know is voodoo. And I hate that part. It's like, why I see companies doing it. And here's what was very interesting, Manny. I grew up with a Hungarian, father. He was a first generation born here. And when stuff came on TV, he would just yell out, "That's a lie. They're trying to sell you." He could see it. And now we have two generations in this world who they believe marketing. And I've seen it so much. It's literally the magic, the voodoo of the 21st century. If I can get you to step out of your comfort zone and buy something, they call it the Gruen transfer. It was named after the guy Gruen who built the first super mall, where all these lights were there. And the Gruen transfer actually refers to when somebody gives over their normal power and their sovereignty because they see something flashy and they start spending their money without any control.
Yeah.
We see it in casinos. We see it at the displays at Macy's during the holiday season. People are like, oh, I have to have that. And they'll spend their last $5 on a cup of coffee because it's called the Gruen transfer. It's actually a psychological title for something that actually takes place. And I think you described it. This is what happens in a cult. You lose your sense of self. You lose your sense of sovereignty and your governorship that is there naturally, where you just go, hey, no, I don't do shit. Stuff like that. So you're in this. You're in this. Your parents have given up their control, and you're just one of dozens of kids, right? Who are growing up in this, thinking this is normal, and then you're stepping back and questioning it a little bit. How did that go over with the cult leaders?
So by the time I sort of hit maybe 10, he was an older guy. And so he was already sort of pretty not esoteric, but I'm drawing a blank on the word. He was not senile. Geez, I can't believe I'm.
But he had like dementia, maybe. So.
No, it wasn't that. It was like, what do you call somebody? It's such an obvious thing when they're like totally like sort of idiosyncratic and well, let's just call it that for now. Let's don't spend too much of our time together trying to figure out that obvious word. He was extremely idiosyncratic already.
Right.
Most of his time, by the time I was 10, was spent writing. This guy would write prolifically, just yellow pad after yellow pad after yellow pad. Eccentric was the word I was looking for.
There you go.
Yeah. So I don't know that he gave it much thought. It was interesting because I've spoken with my mother about this recently, and she says her story is that a lot of the stuff that we, especially as the kids, sort of experienced and caught was not what he sort of wanted the group to be in the first place. But little by little, he abdicated his responsibility and sort of went into this, like, constantly writing all the time and being what you might think of as a little more reclusive and eccentric. So then it was the people organized into sort of two tiers, his followers organized into two tiers that you might think of as like the true believers and the sort of tourists, and it really started to be a reflection of the different interpretations of this true believer tier.
Right.
And so none of them knew what to do with me. None of them did. Right. I was willing to fight. I was willing to throw tantrums. I was getting in trouble all the time. Nobody had the first idea how to deal with me. And so, in classic sort of escapist fashion, they just kind of ignored me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I wound up being, it's hard to package me up as anything but a little hellraiser back then.
So you were an outlier amongst a group of outliers.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
So how did you break away? And I'm assuming you broke away and wound up homeless immediately after that, because you probably didn't have survival skills growing up in a cult. They didn't teach you anything. No,
but I'll tell you, living on the south side of Stockton for about 4 years did teach me survival skills. I mean, fighting my way out of corners, literally, being targeted at school. I remember one time walking home from school, and the older brother of one of the neighborhood kids who was old enough to drive at that time, he drove his car right into us, and we had to jump up on the sidewalk and climb up fences to avoid being hit by this guy's car right in front of my house.
Wow.
And nobody did anything about it. So I didn't get survival skills in the way we think of them in the movies.
Right.
I got this like huge explosive fight or flight thing, and I remember working with a therapist many years later, and she characterized it like, I came to her and I said, I have this side of me that when people see it, it fucking changes everything. They never want to deal with me again.
Right.
Like it's not losing your temper. It's this horrible transformation. Like the Hulk. Yeah, like the Hulk. And she said, well, when you were little, you had no container, you had no protection. You were this tiny little kid. And the only thing that you were ever able to do was just explode as big as you could. And that saved your bacon over and over again. And so I think that's the kind of survival skills I learned.
Yeah. I think what happened is you're describing, it was a survival mechanism to explode so big, people would stop messing with you. Yeah. Yeah. They, like Bill Bixby said in the Incredible Hulk episodes, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry, that sort of. And what's interesting, Manny, maybe we can talk a little bit about this, but there's this thing floating around called toxic masculinity in our culture. I don't believe in what it's being used as right now as a buzzword, but sometimes a man has to do certain things that the culture wouldn't, normally do, but it's there to defend and help protect not only our spouse, our kids, our family, but it's to protect ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with it. That you should have no judgment about it. Right. But, somebody shows up at your house and they want to do harm to you and you go there. Yeah. That's why we are men. That's what we're there for. It's, and this is something, it's like you did it to survive. This is actually really impressive that you naturally did this. Coming from a space, it's like a cult is probably the most domesticated arena that you could be in, where like as an animal loses its sense of smell, the more domesticated it gets, the more it's pampered, the more it's taken taken care of, it loses its ability to hunt, to feed itself, to fight, to the claws are gone, it doesn't even know to bite or smell or to sniff the trail, so it has to be around other animals to do that. Yeah. And so you instinctually get out on the street, and this is what you did as a survival tool. It's not even a learned behavior. It's a reaction to being almost atrophied. Your muscles as a man, as a human being, were atrophied from growing up in this situation. So what was it like being on the street? I mean, this has got people. I want people to understand this, because sometimes when they talk about poverty and homelessness, they think, oh yeah, you're just walking around or something like in the movies. But the reality is it's day to day trying to figure out how to eat, how to find money, how to find food, how to find shelter, how to find clothing. Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was just this really strange sort of progression, from it happened when I lived in Chico, California. Mm-hmm. Moved up there because Stockton had finally gotten the better of me. I got my best friend got stabbed in the heart right in front of me. We got jumped together, and he was stabbed in the heart, and he pulled through. But it was an incredibly alarming experience, obviously. Yeah. And shortly after that, I called up a friend of mine who had moved up to Chico, who kept telling me, you got to check this place out. It's amazing. And I called him up. I said, I'm ready. And so I went from having a roommate there and having a relatively stable late teens, early 20s kind of lifestyle as a heavy drinker and a methamphetamine enthusiast. Mm-hmm. Those things take you places, man. And don't get it twisted, kids. If you're listening to this and think those things won't take you places, because they will. Doesn't matter if they're legal or illegal. That shit'll take you places. And that's what happened. Like I went from, 2 years in that apartment to 18 months in the next one, to a year in the next one, to 6 months in the next one, to da. Wow. And it was just like toward the end there, I was just couch surfing with boxes of stuff, and then there were just no more couches. However, by that time, I had started becoming a dealer, and so that was kind of my mode of living, was like, as long as I have drugs to sell and to do, or I've got a line on where to get some, or at the very least, me and the people I'm with are all high, then I've got shelter.
Right.
And
you've got a tribe is also the other thing.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a real cutthroat tribe, but it's a tribe.
Right.
And that's what the situation was. It was like,
right.
And naturally there's going to come a point where at least one of those support pillars gets wobbly,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you wind up, sleeping out of doors, which is funny because we'd stay up all night outdoors and not even think twice about it.
Right.
But the minute you have to sleep, it's like, fuck, I'm homeless, man.
Right.
I didn't even realize it.
Well, this becomes normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't know if you don't know any other way, this just becomes normal life. It's like, oh, I'm hanging with my buddies. I'm doing all this, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden you realize, whoa, wait a minute. Now, what made you wake up and kind of go, there might be a better way? Was it when you wound up in prison, or was it, there's a moment where everybody hits rock bottom.
Yeah.
What was that for you?
Well, first of all, it wasn't prison. It was just jail. I never like to inflate it to sound.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's correct that. You went to jail.
Yeah.
What for, basically?
Possession with intent to distribute. Yeah. The story itself is pretty funny. I was with my girlfriend at the time, who was just a hot mess, just a train wreck of train wrecks.
Right.
And we've been up for 2 or 3 days, and we decided we're going to go get some breakfast in downtown Chico, and then hopefully try to crash. So there's a big 4-lane road that goes right to the middle of downtown, and it's about 5:30 in the morning. So there's a couple of diners that are open, but there's nobody out at that time, right?
Right.
We pull onto that road, and ahead of us, not behind us, ahead of us by 2 blocks is a cop car. Ahead of us. I can't stress this part enough. The girl I'm with just starts panicking. And I don't mean little panic, like, hold it together. She just starts losing it. Wow. She just goes full Hunter S. Thompson, and so she's like swerving back and forth on the lanes and shrieking in panic. And I'm like, oh, great. So she's having a moment here.
Right.
The police naturally saw her, so she got their attention. They went around the block, came around behind us, and arrested us, pulled us over and arrested us. That was how I wound up going to jail. There's much more to that story, but if you want to hear it all, you got to read the book.
Got it.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah, that was it. And you mentioned prison. I actually was sentenced to 23 months in San Quentin.
Wow.
And it was just some bizarre act of God. Like, after I had gotten sentenced, the bailiff then realized that the same public defender that was defending me was defending the girl I got arrested with, which they can't do. It's a conflict of interest in California. And so I got the whole thing. Like, the judge was furious. He really wanted to send me to San Quentin. So he gives me a new court date. And that was what saved my life right there. That was it.
Wow.
I don't know what would have happened had I had to, do almost 2 years in San Quentin.
Wow.
That would have been a game changer.
Wow. I'm thinking this is through the grace of God somewhere.
It really felt like it. Yeah. Really felt like it.
Now, you were talking about the book. Is that the book, the Tao of the Unbreakable Man? Is that the one? That is, I love that title, The Tao of the Unbreakable Man, which Tao, Tao means path.
Yeah.
And it's powerful. And you offer this free book. Where do they go to get that?
What we can do is I can just send you a link. I'll give you the link and you can connect it to the episode if you want in the show notes.
Absolutely. I would love to do that.
We'll just do it that way.
Because I love the work you do, and I love how you help people transform and uplift. And you do personal branding, but the reality is you help people really capture that mindset that they need to have to be unbreakable. So we're going to offer that to everybody who's listening today. The Tao of the Unbreakable Man by Manny Wolfe. And let's continue. So you were able to avoid, through the grace of God, going to prison. You just went to jail and were waiting to be sentenced, and this got lifted because of the laws in California. So it was a good thing.
Yeah, it was a good thing. It was a technicality, 100%. And
right.
The judge, they were in the county where Chico is. They were really cracking down on methamphetamines at that time. Butte County was apparently just this huge cook lab, basically.
Right.
So there was this huge producer of methamphetamines. So rumor had it, and the law was really taking it seriously. But yeah, that's how that happened. Then I got released. And I literally had to walk back to the city I lived in, Chico. And you asked what the sort of defining moment. It actually wasn't that. That wasn't the defining moment. That was the moment that allowed the defining moment to happen. Through a series of really bizarre events, I show up back in town. I go to one friend's house where I got some of my things stashed, knock on his door, and he looks like he's seen a ghost. Basically, he just shuts the door as fast as he can and says, I got nothing for you, can't help you. I wind up going to several people's houses and having this same thing happen. In the interest of time, I will fast forward and say that the guy who I moved up to Chico to be roommates with, at one point I reached out to him and he showed me a newspaper. And in this newspaper, I made the front page.
Whoa.
And they completely blew the story out of proportion. I was a nickel and dime, homeless, $20 bag drug dealer. That's what I was.
Right.
And they did this whole story about me being this kingpin. It was it defied belief. And so everybody saw it. My reputation with anybody who wasn't in my circle, like my best friend's parents, was just destroyed. So it was really like this. It was like this political move, not political, but it was like this move to try to make whoever my connections and dealers were nervous, or that's what we pieced together. So
wow,
all of my friends were nervous. Everybody thought that I had. So let me tell you something funny about drug dealers and drug users. They all think that somehow their behavior warrants like FBI attention. It's just crazy, right? We think we're on America's most wanted list. We really do. And all of my friends, and these guys are also, nobody even bought their drugs in more than like $50 increments. But we think that
you're thinking
DEA is like scoping us out. And so everybody's now paranoid. Nobody trusts me. And then I finally literally kick in somebody's door because I'm getting really pissed here. Nobody will talk to me and I want answers. So I kick in someone's door and I get answers. And one of the things was I learned about the paper. The other thing was I learned that somebody who I had considered a friend went around while I was in jail to everybody's apartments where my stuff was stashed and took it all. So
You're
literally stole all of a homeless guy's stuff.
Wow.
So then, again, in the interest of time, I'll compress the details there and say that guy happened to be a black guy. And I was also friends with a lot of really racist white guys.
Right.
I liked everybody, and so some of those really intense white guys heard about this and they immediately made it a race issue.
Oh, wow.
So I wind up talking to one of those guys and he says, come out to the car. I want to show you something. So I go out there and he reaches in the glove box and this is the moment. He pulls out 2 guns wrapped in oily rags. He puts one of them in my hand. And this is the part that if you've ever heard me on another podcast, I guarantee you've heard this story because it's like, I don't know how to not tell this story.
Right.
I remember looking down and noticing the oddest details, like that the handle was wrapped in duct tape.
Wow.
and that the serial number was filed off the bottom. Yeah. And so it's like really dawning on me, like I'm getting it. This is an untraceable weapon.
Yep.
And I can sort of hear the guy talking. It's like in these weird underwatery tones. And he's saying, I'm going to come back at midnight and we're going to hunt this guy down. So
wow.
I'm standing there verbally making a plan to hunt someone down and kill them. And that's when I disappeared.
That's when you realized you were right at the edge of going down a road that could get worse.
Yeah, that was like, I remember, in those kind of moments, the oddest things help us get the clarity. Like the thing that just kept coming back to me was, God, I've crossed so many lines I never thought I'd cross already. That's the thing I kept thinking of.
Right.
And I knew this, even if you don't do it. First of all, the guy we were going to go hunt down, pretty wily.
Mm-hmm.
He was not a pushover.
Right.
So there's no telling how this would have turned out.
Yeah. It may not have gone as smooth and simple as you thought.
According to Hoyle. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I just had this moment where outside, externally, I was like, yep, let's do it. Meet me back here at midnight, ... And internally, I'm like, I am the fuck out of here. I am a ghost. Yeah. I'm gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's almost like you're watching yourself from a third party position going, what the hell just happened?
Yeah. Especially at that moment, it was very much like that.
Wow.
It's like there's me outside of me going, yeah, you're not going to be here at midnight.
Yeah. There are moments in my own personal life where I've had that experience. And those are pivotal moments where it's a virgin moment. Like your future is not set until that moment you make a decision in it.
Yeah.
And when you decide to go down the proper path and step away from that, now your life, the future unfolds for you. Mm-hmm. That's amazing that you were able to catch that in the moment. So what happened after that?
I started making calls frantically. Got a hold of a friend of mine who then got a hold of his cousin and her roommate, who were both at Chico State, who happened to be going down to Southern California for Thanksgiving. Basically, he talked them into giving me a ride down to where my family lived in the back of the little CRX with my two little boxes of belongings. Wow. And I ran back to my mommy. That's what I did, man. Yeah.
But dude, that was smart.
I ran back to my mom's house and I knocked on her door and I was just like crying and I was like, I'm done. I'm done. That was the day that my life began again.
So how'd you make this step back home, back to who Manny Wolfe is today? How'd you do that?
Jesus, man, I would love to tell you and everybody listening that it was like this, movie montage, but it was
Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, it was harder. It was harder than the time that I was out there actively in my addiction, living a crazy life. It was way harder than that.
Yeah.
It just took a long, long time. First thing I did was I jumped right into recovery, AA and NA.
Oh, excellent. That's good.
And then, I for those of you out there that know what these are, they have these things called the books, the 2 books of AA. Right. And I just alternated reading them one after the other, one after the other, one after the other, one after the other for about, I don't know, it was like 2 years. I just read them back to back to back to back to back.
Hello, I'm Bill W. And I think the other one is the 12 Steps.
12 Traditions. Yeah.
Yeah. I have several family members who are in AA. Mm-hmm. God bless them. Wow. And so therapy as well, you had mentioned earlier.
That didn't come until much, much later.
Okay.
So the reason that we get ourselves into lifestyles like that tends to always be about an underlying pain or schism in one of our primary connections or something like that,
Right.
Yeah. And in my case, it was no different. There's a deep abandonment wound and what you would call an anxious ambivalent attachment to my mom.
Right.
So the bond that was, that we had was not 100% solid. It was not 100% tight.
Right.
That kind of stuff it can dictate the course of your entire life, and does for many people. Yeah.
Oh, it does. I'm a living testament that it's almost ongoing. It's less than it was, but it's almost ongoing. And part of it is it's the template you were born with.
Yeah.
So to undo the template, and if there are any men or women listening, to overcome your family's template programming and all this other stuff, it takes a lot of, it takes gnashing of teeth, giving up the ego, allowing yourself to be beat up, thrown to the mat, picked back up, and reshaped, remolded in the image you have to create. Because let's be honest, if we all had the perfect template, we'd all be, singing Kumbaya, taking martial arts, getting college degrees. We'd all be happier, and and the alcohol and the drug industry wouldn't be able to make a sale. The reality is, as we go through this hell, this is a testament to you, my brother, and that is you stood up and you took the challenge. Yeah. The challenge was, I don't know what I don't know, and I'm willing to let everything go to be reshaped and remolded. And
totally.
Love that about you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I remember just getting really just sinking my teeth in, and going even going through AA and NA, it got to the point very early on for me where I'm watching these people show up at meetings, just drink 50 cups of coffee, smoke cigarettes, and basically complain to each other, right? That's the currency of meetings and rooms, is that you get to commiserate in your misery.
Right.
And through doing it, you relieve the intensity of it. But I hated that. Mm-hmm. I fucking hated that. I'm like, I don't want to sit around and complain all the time. I want to figure out how I got here in the first place.
Wow.
Why am I so jacked up? Why can't I? And this was a big one for me, and it would prove to be a bigger one as time went by. Mm-hmm. Why can't I have anything but this one stupid, frustrating relationship with a woman? Right. This one relationship I keep living over and over again. Right? There's two kinds. There's one night stands, and then there's this frustrating long-term relationship that follows a predictable pattern.
Wow. And
that just killed me. Dude, so it was more like stubbornness, I think, in some cases.
Well, I'm laughing because it's like you're sitting there and you discovered patterns. This is incredibly important for people. What's the pattern in your life? What's the pattern in your finances? What's the pattern in your personal relationships? What's the pattern in your romantic relationships? What's the pattern in your business relationships? I had a good friend many, many years ago. He was about to quit his job, and his wife said, no. Well, I don't like it here. And she goes, look at your resume. You quit right around 2 to 3 years in everything you're in. And
it's right there on paper.
Right. It's right there on paper. So why don't you instead reinvent your employment? And the guy spent over a 3-day weekend writing a proposal for a division at this big financial company. And he walked in and he submitted it. They were so impressed. They put him in charge of that division, and he stayed there like 10 years. So these breaking of patterns, sometimes it's not that easy, but breaking a pattern requires being aware of it first, which you did, which I admire the hell out of you for this. And then seeing the pattern in your relationships that go all the way back to your mom and all this. But there's another piece of this. I'm cracking up. I'm like, I see the little boy that was in the cult questioning everything and saying, this is bullshit. Yeah. Doing the same to yourself in your life and trying to put it together, put the pieces together.
Yeah. And that's been that. I don't know if I came in with that or if it was forged in me through the experience in the cult, but that's me in a nutshell, man. Tenacity, it's tenacity, but it's also that inability. First of all, I have sometimes a maddeningly attenuated bullshit needle.
Me too.
Yeah. So
35 years in New York, I get spotted a mile away. It's like,
the few of us that have that, it puts you in a strange position.
Yeah.
Because when you call BS on a person or a thing, you're seldom wrong. But most people don't figure it out until much later.
Yes.
So you're always the one going, no, that stinks. And everybody's like, what are you talking about?
They can't see it.
Right. And so it's really interesting. I'm trying to figure out how to get that into my sort of not marketing that I teach people.
Right. Oh, I'll throw this out to you. I have a problem with, the New Yorker in me can come up and be a prick when I need to be, but I suffer from nice guy syndrome a little too much.
Yeah.
I see it. I shake my head and keep my mouth shut. And then I kind of go, And then when I explode, I explode. I think it would be better if I spotted it right away, pointed it out, said, okay, you can't fool me.
Yeah.
I see what you're doing. Yeah. And stop thinking you're smarter than me, that I can't see it. Yeah. That pisses me off more than anything else.
I do the same thing. I let it go too long out of some. I don't know what that pattern is, but I do the same thing. Like, I read The Art of War, like I'm sure you have.
Yes, I have.
Over and over again. And I typically, I'll give you an example. I was just approached with what I think is a complete scam, but it was a $10 million seed round into a project that I'm working on.
Right.
And at first I was like, it seems a little like the thing that's out of whack is that I can't imagine somebody would want to invest $10 million based on a business plan, an executive profile, executive summary, and a pitch deck.
Right.
And SOPs, right? In other words, we're pre-revenue.
Right.
So it just felt like that part doesn't quite match.
Right.
So then I fall into this pattern that I do when something doesn't quite match. I go into that, if you're strong, make the enemy think you're weak thing.
Yes.
Right. And so I sit back and I act a little happier than I am. And I act a little more sort of starry-eyed than I am, waiting for them to sort of show their cards, tip their cards a little bit. Yeah. And in this case, I trust my intuition was right, because like I kept asking the go-between guy, why don't you have the head of this VC fund just send me a letter? Just have him send me a letter, just some communication on a letterhead. Let's do that. And all I kept getting was third-hand information and a couple of screenshots. And I'm like, this just doesn't quite sit right with me. Yeah. So finally I get a message and he says, they like your offer. They like your deal. They want to offer you 10 million at 40% equity. I said, okay, great. At this point, it's like, okay, great. I'll tell you what's the guy's name and what's the name of his company? I'm going to do a little research. So the guy who's the go-between him, now he goes, oh, well, okay. So if you look this guy up, you're going to find that many years ago, he was in a little bit of trouble. Yeah. So
I don't want you to be alarmed. As soon as that comes up, I'm sort of like,
that was the story. I don't want you to be alarmed, but there were some people in his company doing some stuff. And as being a leader, he stepped up and took responsibility for it. Well, it turned out he was indicted for fraud.
Wow.
Yeah. And forging legal documents. And he defrauded banks.
Wow. Well, maybe he could be like Michael Milken and teach at Harvard.
Exactly. Because let's face it, in the US, we make criminals into rock stars.
Oh, we do. We do. It's astounding.
So anyway, the point though is like I definitely waited too long to go, you know what, this feels like some BS to me.
Right.
Yeah. And so I got into this whole back and forth where the intermediary is like, just come down and take the meeting, just look him in the eye. And so finally I said to the guy, look, the guy's an indicted con man with aliases.
Right.
Of course you want me to look him in the eye. What con man wouldn't want to look you in the eye? That's what they do. Con means confidence.
Right.
I saw the heist. I saw the sting.
I know what's going on. Yeah. What? So I can look him in the eye and say, okay, where do I sign? Here's my money.
Yeah. Well, check out the hook. This was the funniest part. It's like, you're going to get 10 million. You're going to get 10 million. You're going to get 10 million. You're going to get 10 million over and over again. And then at the last minute, so there's a due diligence that has to be done. I'm like, yeah, of course. And he goes, but here's the catch. You have to pay for it.
Like, yeah, that's when I'm done.
okay, that seems a little suspect.
Yes.
And he goes, oh, I think it's genius because then you have skin in the game. And I'm like, how much is it? He said $12,000.
Yeah, that's skin.
And it's a scam. Yeah. So I
It's
got to
a
pay
scam.
$12,000. I have no control over the outcome of the due diligence. And this guy's doing 25 of these. Well, guess what? 25 times 12,000 is 300,000. That's a pretty good payday
Right.
when nobody somehow makes it through the due diligence, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
12 grand to lift the hood. It reminds me of the story David Brenner told growing up in Philadelphia in his book, Soft Pretzels with Mustard. And he said there was this junkyard at the bottom of the hill that would pay, I'm just going to make up a number, $350 for a car if you can drive it into the lot. He'll just give you cash, okay? So him and his buddies, they get a car that actually has no engine in it whatsoever. They get it to the top of the hill, they push it down, and as they're getting close, they're beeping the horn, they're beeping the horn, they're beeping the horn. The guy comes out, and they pull in, and they turn sideways. They park the car like a pro, put it in park, and get out. They get their $350, and then they run away because he lifts the hood, and there's no engine in it. So this is the same thing. You're paying 12 grand for the hopes of lifting the hood to see the engine, and there's no engine.
Yeah.
And what's astounding is he had a crew telling him this. So this is funny. By the way, how do we get a hold of you if we want to enter some of your coaching programs? You help people with personal branding, public speaking, storytelling, and organic marketing. And I know they can find you, Manny Wolfe, on YouTube. That's with an E at the end of the word Wolfe, Manny, MANNY WOLFE. You're on YouTube. You're on Facebook as well. And then you have groups and things like this, but you can go to mannywolfe.com, correct?
Not yet. Actually, the site is under revamp.
Ooh, nice. Well, we should hold on to that and go to it at some point.
We're gonna put the site back out there at the same time that we launch the new client creation method course, which is happening right now. What I would suggest, if you want to come into my world, do it the standard way. Take the free gift that I have for you, which requires you to give me your email address to get it. It's called an opt-in for those that don't know it.
Right.
And the free gift is really pretty cool. It is the 9 pillars of audience growth.
Mm-hmm.
This is like really for me, everything that I do that you would call marketing is kind of a labor of love.
Right.
Because I want you to think of me. I want to earn the right to have you think of me as the guy who doesn't ever try to bullshit you with the marketing.
Right.
I want you to think of me as the guy who has a system for you with no bells and whistles. It's really just a drivetrain, a steering wheel, and 4 good tires. You know what I mean?
There you go.
Get you there, and you don't have to worry about all the crazy hype and this is not something that'll get you 7 figures in 7 days. It is not, you'll never get those kind of promises from me. You'll never get that kind of hyperbole from me. It's a way to literally, through work and effort and focus and consistency, grow yourself an audience into the hundreds of thousands or millions.
Nice.
Like my audience right now on Facebook, and when I say audience, I mean trackable, pixelable, targetable people is about 1.2 million.
Wow.
So don't get caught up in the vanity metrics like a page has to have a 50,000 million likes on it. It doesn't.
Right.
It doesn't. I use the tools that Facebook built into the platform, so that I can retarget and track people and send them new content and stuff like that. And it's about 1.2 million now. It's called the 9 Pillars of Audience Growth cheat sheet. I'll give it to you to give to them.
Excellent.
If you want
Thank you.
Just take it, and it'll cost you an email address.
That's awesome, Manny. Thank you so much. Yeah, everybody should get in on that deal because, like I said, I love your story. We tried to get you on season 3, and we finally got you on season 4. This is one of those stories that is what Awakened Nation is about. It's about overcoming, finding your resilience, stepping up into your power, understanding yourself at a much deeper level. This is 21st century stuff, doing the shadow work, and becoming, a five-dimensional person, who operates and looks at yourself and things like that. So I want to thank you so much for being on the show. Now we're going to do lightning round.
Cool.
I'm going to ask you three questions. This is where some people, their stomach drops, they're like, oh, what am I going to say? It's like, just have fun with this one. So my first question is, what should we know about Manny Wolfe that we don't know about you?
I am a genuine dyed-in-the-wool introvert, legitimately. I'm not like the cool, like, hey, I'm an introvert.
Yeah.
I heard, who was it that said this? I think it was Elijah Wood, said being an introvert is desperately wanting to be invited to the party, even though you're not going to go.
I like that.
I need social interaction, and I need the groups and stuff like that, but not very much, man.
Yeah.
Not very much. And for me, I have to recharge alone, or maybe just with my wife and daughter around.
Right.
I'm a true textbook introvert. I don't think people understand that about me.
You're not the first person I've met who's doing this kind of work where you're putting your face out, you're doing videos, you're talking, and you are a dyed-in-the-wool introvert. This is amazing.
Well, I first of all, I think we have a misunderstanding of what introvert is.
Right.
It really is just, how do you recharge, and how much social interaction do you want ideally?
Yeah.
But I love communication, whether it's asynchronous or together in person or together over Zoom. I love it on a level that borders on obsession.
Right.
And I love also the times like it means so much to me when somebody comes to me and says, I really get a no BS vibe from you.
Yeah, that's what I get.
Yeah, and that means a lot to me.
Good.
That's something that was years and years of reduction and stripping away to get to that.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and being an introvert is, for me, it's awesome. I don't dislike it at all. I just know that, like, for instance, I train public speakers as one of the things under my umbrella. I don't want to go do public speaking. Not anymore.
That's funny.
It just takes too much out of me, man.
and I'm the opposite. I was deathly shy as a kid, but I love speaking.
Yeah.
My second question is, what does a perfect day look like to you?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I always feel so like I need to give this sort of like James Joyce level answer, this sort of great American novel kind of answer.
Right.
It would depend on where I was at emotionally during that day.
Right.
But a good day for me, a really good day, is so all the money I make now, I make by helping people, which is really cool to me,
Yeah.
And so a good day for me is a day where I've made money because it means I have some money and I've also helped some people. Right. I've probably had a great workout. I really, really like some simple things like hanging out at a coffee shop in a downtown area, or going out to eat a good dinner. Like that stuff, the older I get, the more important that stuff is for me. And then spending a little time out in nature if I can,
Yeah. I always find that the best part of it, I mean, I had parents who argued in restaurants, so I love going to restaurants alone. A lot of people don't question, why would you do that? Well, you have no idea. Yeah. But yeah, I'm the same way, brother, man. I like to go out hiking in the mountains by myself, and then come back and just sit in the diner and have a cheeseburger and read or take in all the people. I'm a people watcher.
It's amazing to me, man.
Yeah, it is. It's so amazing.
Such a good day.
Yeah, it is. Third and final question. At the end of your life, what do you want to be known for?
I used to have a really grandiose answer to that one too. And as I go on, the things change a little bit.
Right.
I want to, so more than be known for, is I want to know, if it's possible, I want to know that I've impacted people even that sounds like a cliche, right?
Right.
But I mean, I had so much of my life that was like living this sort of drug fueled, outgoing rock star party guy thing. And I don't know if that was really me or not, honestly, because the drugs were part of my life from such a young age. And then I had this huge, long, dark tea time of the soul. I mean, my sort of process of recovery and getting better, it went for at least a decade. You know, a decade of like, I couldn't quite date right. I couldn't manage friendships very well. I was just a fucking wreck.
Right.
And so one of the things that I came out of all that with was this idea that like, man, I really want to live more of my life having helped people than I did having sort of been a suck on society, a drain on society. And if I can achieve that, I'd feel pretty good about that. Wow. And so now that's sort of grown to like, I'd really like to know that there are people out there who are like, let's say you're a fit pro or a tax professor, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, right? That you found me, you learned what I taught you, and now you have this thriving business where your family is happy and you're making people happy. And so to put it kind of literarily, like I'd like to know at the end of my life that the candle that I am was able to light 10,000 candles that each lit 10,000 more.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really want that. I really want that.
I love hearing that. That's a powerful, powerful way to live your life, to help others. I mean, I love hearing that, Manny. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Who was it? P.T. Barnum that said, he basically said the noblest art is that of making others happy.
Yeah. And
I want to thank you for being on Awakened Nation, Manny. It's been an honor. I am so glad you made it. And everybody should reach out. We're going to leave in the show notes everything that you can do to contact Manny. But once again, thank you, my brother.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Brad.
You're welcome. Hey, everybody, tune in next week for another fantastic episode here on Awakened Nation. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much for being a big part of the Awakened Nation movement. This is how you can help me and our extraordinary guests. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let's grow this movement by word of mouth. Our success will be because of you. Thank you, and see you next week.